Moving on here with that, again, like Open LDAP, we need to define encryption. Again, it defaults to none. Definitely would not recommend you leave that there. You'll want to go through and change this to either use Start TLS or LDAPS, and this will go through and automatically change the port that is used for those connections to either 636 and 389, depending on what you have set there. So you can go through and change the encryption. Definitely recommend that you go through and change it from the default to none. And then the last portion, a couple other portions here, this is a new option here for starting with 5.2, is to go through and do a password renewal. So certain environments have a requirement to go through and update the machine account password. This is different from the service account password that we're utilizing for group lookups. The machine account password is used more for Kerberos authentication and connections like that. So we can go through and set the ability to rotate and automatically refresh the machine account password within a certain period of time for that. So you can go through and turn that on if you have security requirements within your environment that require that rotation of the machine account password. And then the last portion of this under advanced, there's a couple options in here. So first off is that we can go through, we can control, do I want to enable trusted domains and other force for this? So this means that if we have one-way trust or two-way trust, do I want to allow the system to go through and search those and do lookups in there and either authorize or authenticate users from those other forests or not? NTLM, if I want to go through and I want to enable or disable NTLM authentication, I can go through and do that. If I disable NTLM authentication, we'll rely strictly on Kerberos authentication. So there are security requirements. For what your security requirements are in your environment, you can either turn on or turn off the ability to use NTLM authentication with those. VMS authentication provider, we've already talked about that. We also have in here filters here. There's a more complex configuration if you want. You set some filters for how we're looking up users and things like that. NetGroup DNS operational, we've already talked about that. Authentication method, we've already mentioned that. Query group mode and POSIX attribute source are something else that is new here. So POSIX attribute source just says for RFC 2307 attributes in Active Directory, where do we want to look those up? So typically there is no guarantee or there's no requirement with an Active Directory that if you have RFC 2307 attributes or you have UID number and GID number, that there is no enforced rule within Active Directory that says that, hey, that has to be unique across all domains. So this tells us here, because of that, we have some controls as to where we're doing lookups, because we don't want to find that I've got a UID number that is mapping to two users. We want to keep that just to a single user so we'll always know which user it is. And this allows us to control, do we want to just do the look for those attributes in the domain we're joined in, or do I want to do globally within the forest or only specific domains? We control those there. And again, for this here, some options here. So we can see here that I've got a couple different domains. I can say which specific domains I wish to go through and use for that, or just leave it to join domain that I'm part of. All right, so once we've got that set up, we're going to see kind of this setup here. We're going through, we've got the Active Directory connection defined, but we're going to see that we're going to be in a connected state, which means that service account has validated that, yep, that's a valid account. It can authenticate, it can do lookups, but we're still not a member of the domain. We haven't actually gone through and established that join yet. So when we want to go through and we want to do the join, we just go through and right-click on this and say join. And the join, again, is going to require that we provide a different username and password. Again, it's either going to be a domain administrator, means someone that has the ability to create a new computer object in AD, or it's going to be a user that has delegated authority to an existing object to use that. We just provide the username, provide the password, and it goes off and does that. Either it'll succeed, or you'll get an error saying why it didn't succeed. Maybe you had the incorrect password or some other reason there for that, but usually goes pretty smoothly and just takes a few seconds to complete. Once we've joined, then we've got a couple different options here. We can go through to validate that we see what we expect to see within the domain or within the Active Directory environment. So we can go through and make some modifications for the existing connection. I can either turn on or off NTLM. I can go through, I can edit this and modify my attributes if I need to for my attribute mapping. We can change things there just by right-clicking and modifying that connection. So kind of an example here, if I want to see other domains that are in the forest, I can go through and right click and say, hey, show me all the domains. And this will give me a listing of all the domains that we have within the forest. It'll also include any domains that are part of a two-way trust for that. So we'll see all the domains that the system is aware of across those. So very, very quick way to validate saying, hey, am I seeing all the things that I expect to see, or is there possibly some communication issue for that? We can also go through and see the DCs that are available to us. Now, this is not necessarily always going to be a complete list of all the DCs in the environment. Typical large active directory environments may contain hundreds or even thousands of domain controllers on here. This is going to be a subset of those DCs. But what it is going to go through and include, it's going to include the local DCs along with a few select other ones from the queries that we made to AD to get a listing of those. So we'll see, the name of the DC that's out there. We'll see the state of the DC. Is it a healthy DC? And then we'll also see, is it something that's on site? Meaning, is this something that is part of the same Active Directory site that we are part of? Now, health is usually, the state of the DC is typically going to be healthy for this. If there's a problem communicating with that DC, it'll be some error condition. A lot of cases you may see this unknown state, and this unknown state really, it doesn't indicate that there's an error with that DC. It just means that it's a DC we haven't talked to yet, or we haven't had a reason to go communicate to, so we really just don't know the state of it, and we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to troubleshoot that or go through and connect to it because we don't need to talk to it. Most of the times we're going to go through, we're going to stick with the local Active Directory site because those are the DCs that basically have the shortest cost to contact or the smallest cost to contact because they're local to us. So we'll see those as healthy and on-site. We may see a couple other ones that we've communicated to through some of the DC locator code that we use. But most of the other ones on there that are not on-site will just have a state of unknown because we haven't attempted to talk to those with that. So nothing to be concerned about with that. We can also see some other information here as to whether which global catalogs are available. A global catalog, if you're not familiar with what a global catalog is a subset of your AD infrastructure that lives on a DC, but it basically will contain information of all the domains for that. So we provide this as just troubleshooting method there, and it tells us which ones we see out there, what their states are for that, and when we're to go through and do a refresh. And we'll refresh this list about once an hour normally.